I have been quite open and candid in the past about the fact that I can only just about produce one of these videos, and I can't draw at all, which is one of the reasons why I need an artist. So the only thing that I can offer you outside of the episodes is a little bit more information and access to the material, bit of behind the scenes stuff. So in that vein, one of the things I did last week was put a post on the community section asking if anybody had any questions. God bless you, you did, and they're damn good questions. So I'm going to do my best in this video to answer them, and hopefully everybody will find the results a little bit entertaining. If this works, we might make a semi-regular feature of it. If it doesn't, it's the one time we'll try it. So here we go. Cody, thank you for your question. It is actually the most asked question that I get. When this channel was first conceived, it was very much for World War II. The idea being that you get a scary story each week, as well as a little bit of a World War II history lesson. And I've got about, I reckon, 30-ish episodes lined up to run through. I'm thinking of other things all the time. People are suggesting things, but about 30. There were never any original plans to go outside of World War II, but there does seem to be quite a bit of an appetite to do that. In line with that, I have thought of at least one story set in Northern Ireland during the 70s and potentially an Afghanistan themed story. I know Sean's potentially looked at World War one as well. And I think if the demand is there, we'll look to do it. It's just how we'll manage it across the World War II stuff. One of the ideas I did have was that if there were people coming forward who wanted to write as the channel grew, I might task non-World War II stories out to them and then run it alongside the ones that I'm doing. That's not set in stone. I think the will is there for it. So I suppose the answer to that is going to be yes. At some point, we will step outside World War II and look at other conflicts, but I haven't got anything set in concrete for that yet. Hi, Timu. This is actually one of my favourite questions, and it's not something I've given much thought to. Originally, the idea for the channel was going to be that there would be a British military unit, and they would be the sort of glue that put the stories together. So they would be formed at the start of World War II, and then the stories would all come in from interviews of survivors or witnesses who'd seen it, and perhaps some of the surviving characters would get pulled into that unit as you went along. I have to say, when I started playing about with that, it became problematic in terms of figuring out who the survivors were, how they get access to them, what sequence the stories would happen in. So I parked that. I mean, it's something I might revisit. But to answer your question, yes, it is definitely a shared universe. You are going to see some of the characters that you've already met come back in other stories, and you will find relatives and associates of the characters that you've always met coming back in other stories as well. So yeah, imagine this is sort of like a parallel universe where these things happen during World War II, but they are indeed all happening under the same idea. I've had suggestions saying, are we going to get the Atlanteans and the aliens featuring in the same episode? I have got an idea that towards the end of the series, there might be some form of hunting down Germans who've escaped to South America with various elements of tech from some of the episodes, and then combining some of the cryptids, some of the bad guys in that, but it is only quite loose at the moment. Hi, Michael. Great question. As I have just explained, the initial intent was to have one sole agency or one sole unit investigating all of the stories and to have them as the sort of starting point for it. But that's not how it's played out. There isn't really an overarching narrative. It's not going at this point in any direction or building to a larger storyline. However, what I would say is that I have another project after this that I've got loosely planned out, which would see the format brought forward into modern day. And I suppose I'd describe it as a bit like the X-Files. The the first couple of series before it became conspiracy laden. Same idea in that each week you have a threat or a cryptid or a monster, and then that would draw back to some of the World War II episodes that we've done now, be it relatives or descendants of the people who were associated with it, or the monsters coming back 70 odd years after they went away. So I suppose there's two parts to the answer. At the moment, no, there is no larger or wider narrative to it. However, it might get hammered and twisted and bent moving forward so that eventually there will be. Quinn, I love the vote of confidence that we're still going to be here in 2 years. Joking apart, I think we will. The response has been quite positive, and the growth has been quite steady. So, in 2 years, I think there's certainly enough material for us to still be doing then what we're doing now, just hopefully with a slightly bigger audience than we've got now. Um, the issue of people submitting stories or writing stories from other conflicts, I don't know whether to look at combining that as we go along, expanding the staff and running that alongside the World War II stuff, or just exhausting the World War II stuff in 2, 3 years and moving to other conflicts. I'll make that decision as I go along. I don't think we'll have switched to any new projects fundamentally. So in 2 years, hopefully, we'll still be doing them what we're doing now, but just with one eye on where we go from there. And I guess Randy's question follows on from Quinn's in terms of when the World War II stories are exhausted, what then? Um, if we run the World War One ones alongside them, then that'll take a bit longer. If not, then I would suggest we do the World War II stories and then start switching up to other conflicts in some format after that. At the same time, I did have an idea that if this grew to a sufficient size, we could use it as a springboard for other authors and other artists to come in with horror and sci-fi stories, and just put out a story a week, story every couple of weeks, just to entertain people that aren't linked to each other. The other idea, as I've already mentioned, is a new project which is set in the modern day, which harks back to this and uses it. And I think my dream project, which I've given a little bit of thought to, would be a War of the Worlds project. So, second invasion, follow on from the original Martian invasion with a steampunk element to see how the different governments have adapted and changed the technology they've inherited. I mean, that's completely unrelated from this, and it would be a big jump from what I'm doing now, in that it'd be individual chapters of a larger story. But I think years down the line, once this has come to a natural conclusion, then that might be a direction that I'd go with that. Hi, Max. Absolutely, it's not just going to be Germans and Brits. There are two Russian stories already panned out. One is Stalingrad, and the other is a sort of partisan themed one. Um, there's some Japanese ones that we've considered as well. Quite keen to do something involving an Aswang further along the line. Um, in terms of the sandworms, I have to say there is a Tremors themed episode set out. I was looking to do it in the snow though, potentially Norway or Iceland, somewhere like that, with burrowing cryptids. So yeah, you will see that in some form. There is also a desert episode planned. I was thinking of doing something from the Italian army's point of view, but that's probably going to go more down the Nephilim and Hollow Earth route, as opposed to direct sand burrowing worms. But yeah, you're going to get stories from all over the world. It's not just going to be limited to Europe and the North Atlantic. And there is a burrowing story planned, though. As always, everything I say is subject to change because I'm making it up as I go along. Hi, Elise. Yes, I think we've already covered there'll be stories from outside World War II, crowbarring their way in and mixing up the format. World War One is probably the easiest route to go to link stories to World War Two. I say I've already spoken to Sean in terms of one episode, which might be a time slip or might be a ghost related World War One episode. So I think yes, you are likely to see that. In terms of a golem or a Dybbuk, there were at least two possible episodes from a Jewish demon point of view. One potentially a police officer in bombed out Dresden tracking a demon, and the other a bunch of Jewish resistance fighters capturing some Germans and using a demon to get at them. Um, there's been a couple of requests for a golem. I have to say I'm going to have to read up on golems if that's going to happen. But yes, definitely some Jewish themed cryptids coming in at some point, and almost certainly some World War material coming as well. Afternoon, Glenn. Yes, I Mendacious is probably where it all started. I watched a film called Outpost years ago with Ray Stevenson in it, which is where you end up with Nazi zombies. And I think that movie started off the whole subgenre of Nazi zombies, which is morphed horribly out of control. And as a result of that, that's when I thought of Mendacious. So I wrote that purely before the idea of a YouTube channel was ever around. I was just writing it on the side while I was doing bedtime stories. This week's episode, this month's episode, which will be coming out, episode 5, Ela. I wrote that one as well, and again, that was just me writing at that point. There wasn't any plan with them to turn them into this format. In terms of how long it takes to do an episode, I can do a script in anywhere between 3 days and a week. If I'm on my days off from work and the kids aren't nipping at my heels too much. Sean tends to produce 3-4 images a week. So if there's 12 images roughly in an episode, it takes about a month to get the artwork done for it. Once he's got the artwork across to me, it'll take me a couple of attempts to get the narration right. Not that I ever get it right, I'm still working on it. And then probably about another day to get the subtitles up and working on it. So as a rough average, we're putting out, I reckon, about an episode every 4 weeks. The trailer usually takes me about an hour to do in reality. And then the making of video is about half a day after that as well. It's just a case of whether I put the making out video with the episode or leave it a couple of days and then put it out then. Alexander, that is a cracking question. The reality is that I've been writing for bedtime stories for 2-3 years now. So I have been endlessly researching ghost stories and monster stories and cryptid stories. So in terms of inspiration, what will happen is I'll read, say, a Bigfoot, 3 weeks worth of Bigfoot testimony, and then think, where can I put a Bigfoot in World War II? And that's where an episode will start. The majority of the inspiration comes from stuff I've gone over on the internet for bedtime stories. At the same time, I have spent a lifetime wasting my life watching really awful horror movies and sci-fi movies. And a lot of the time, the genesis for something I create will be in something really random that I've watched from Russia or Italy or the 1970s, where I've watched a terrible science fiction movie, but the basis of the character could work in World War Two. Um, Anywhere and everywhere. I'll be walking along with my phone in my pocket. I'll see a picture or hear something on the radio or an idea will pop in my head, and I'll just write it down and go, oh yeah, burrowing ice monsters. That'd be good, wouldn't it? A zombie creature that rips people's body parts off to fix its own and ends up with a mixture of animal and skeletal features. There's an idea, and then it'll sit on my phone for a month or two, and then I'll come back to it and think, right, where do I stick that then? Yeah, Norway, that'll work. And it's as simple as that. So largely bedtime stories, but also a lifetime wasted watching really bad movies. Matthew, thanks for the question. So basically, you may or may not be aware that I was a police officer in the West Midlands over in the UK for 15, 16 years. As a result of some of the things that I went to, some of the jobs I attended, I did start writing as a means of distracting myself or redirecting some of those thoughts. Um, Initially, that led me to just writing for a news site in the States called Screen Geek. And then from that, I transitioned into bedtime stories where I've been since. It's good for my mental health. It's had very good. I've got no formal writing qualification or training, but people have been very, very complimentary and positive about what I've done, and that's just spurred me on to move outside of bedtime stories and do my own thing. There is quite a lot of military history to my family, which I might go into in future episodes and the production videos. A couple of relatives during World War II served as an inspiration for me. But really, I've just been doing it, and it seems to have been working so far. Everybody's feedback online. I appreciate most people have come via bedtime stories or wartime stories to watch the channel. Have been really supportive and really positive. I've got no illusions. There are a world of trolls out there waiting to attack, but I'll deal with that when it happens. Um, I just keep doing it because people are enjoying it and are asking me to do it, and because it helps me when I'm going through a rough patch with something I've seen or done to cope with it. And if I can encourage other people or distract other people, then that's something I'm keen to keep doing. Right, so that's it for this session then. Please be brutal, as you always are, in your feedback in the comments section. If you've been entertained by this and found value in it, then let me know, and I'll leave it another couple of weeks, and we can do it again. And I'd probably quite like to get Sean in as well on it too, if I can figure out how to do that. If this was a complete waste of time, just tell me, and you won't see it again. But thank you, as always, for your ongoing support, and I will see you for the next chapter soon.